Today, we're diving deep into one of the Middle East's most private and, frankly, most misunderstood communities, the Druze. And to even begin to understand them, you have to start with this wild paradox that sits right at the heart of their identity.
So just think about this for a second. What if everything the world called you was based on the name of your greatest enemy, a figure your own sacred texts actually condemn? Well, for the Druze, that's not some thought experiment. It's their reality.
And here it is, laid out plain and simple. The world calls them Druze, a name that's tied to a heretic they completely rejected. But among themselves, they are the Muwahidun. It means the Unitarians, or the monotheists. And this isn't just semantics. It's a totally different identity, one that's all about their absolute belief in a single, indivisible God. So how in the world did that happen? Let's peel back the first layer of this mystery and get into the story of where that name actually came from. It's a story of betrayal. The irony here is just staggering. The name Druze comes from this one guy, Muhammad al-Darazi. Now, he was an early preacher, sure, but his teachings were seen as a total corruption of the faith. In fact, the foundational Druze texts don't just call him a heretic, they call him Satan. And yet, somehow, through a bizarre twist of history, his is the name that stuck. Okay, now we're going to go deeper than just a name. We're getting into what is maybe their most distinctive belief, the one that really sets them apart from pretty much every other major religion in the region. The concept is called Takamas. Now, lots of cultures believe in reincarnation, but the Druze have a very specific take on it. And the Arabic term itself is so vivid, it literally translates to changing shirts. What a perfect metaphor, right? The idea that the body is just a piece of clothing for the soul. And at death, the soul just puts on a new one. And this isn't just some vague spiritual idea. It has very clear rules. First off, they believe the number of souls in the universe is fixed. It's a closed system. So when a Druze person dies, their soul doesn't float off to some waiting room. No, it's instantly reborn into a newborn Druze baby. And crucially, souls only ever move between humans. No coming back as a butterfly. And a male soul is always reborn as a male, a female soul as a female. You can imagine how this belief completely shapes your worldview. I mean, if death is just a transition, literally like changing your shirt, what happens to fear? It basically vanishes. This is seen as the philosophical bedrock of the legendary courage of Druze warriors. Death just loses its power, its finality. Okay, so if you have these incredibly unique, secret beliefs, how do you protect them? Well, that brings us to the next piece of the puzzle, a really unique social structure that divides the entire community based on spiritual knowledge. Essentially, Druze society is split into two groups. You have the Uqal, which means the wise. They're the initiated religious elite. They're the ones who study the sacred texts, and they live pretty simple, ascetic lives. Then you have the Juhal. Now that word can translate to the ignorant, but it's not an insult. It really just means the uninitiated. They're the majority, living regular secular lives, and they can choose to become initiated into the Uqal later if they prove they're ready. For the initiated, for the Uqal, the universe is understood through these 5 cosmic principles. It's a fascinating system, deeply influenced by Greek philosophy, that explains how everything flows from a single divine source. And these principles are represented by the 5 colors of the Druze star. You see green for the universal mind, red for the soul, yellow for the word. It's like their map of the cosmos. This philosophical worldview led to a really radical shift in religious practice. They essentially replaced the traditional 5 pillars of Islam with 7 ethical virtues. And look at this change. Instead of ritual prayer, the highest duty becomes protecting your brothers. Instead of a formal creed, it's truthfulness, and specifically, truthfulness among fellow believers. This built an incredibly strong, tight-knit community bound by a shared moral code. So, you've got this unique name, a radical theology, a secret social structure. How on earth did a small community like this survive for 1,000 years in one of the most volatile regions on the planet? Let's break down their blueprint for survival. It really comes down to a 3-part strategy. First, geography. They retreated up into the high, rugged mountains, which served as natural fortresses. Second, they earned a reputation as fierce, formidable warriors. And third, they mastered the art of secrecy, a principle that allowed them to blend in whenever danger was near. And that principle has a name, Taqiyya. For the Druze,
This is a vital survival tool. It means that when you're under threat of persecution, it's permissible to outwardly conform to the faith of the dominant power. And this isn't seen as hypocrisy at all. It's about creating a protective outer shell to safeguard the precious inner kernel of their true faith. Now, a culture of secrecy like this, it gets noticed, especially by other secret societies. In the 19th century, Western groups like the Freemasons became absolutely fascinated by the Druze. This here is the cover of a book from 1876, written by an American Masonic researcher who traveled to the region, drawn in by the mysteries of this ancient brotherhood. And get this, check out this incredible historical crossover. The author dedicated his book to the Ottoman governor of Syria at the time, a guy named Mohammed Rashid Pasha, who he reveals was also a Freemason. I mean, think about that. You've got an American Mason from Kentucky finding common ground with a top Ottoman official in Damascus, all through the shared language of a secret fraternity. It's wild. So for our final layer, we're leaving the mountain strongholds behind. Because this community, which seems so isolated and remote, actually has a surprisingly global reach. Its roots have spread far, far beyond the Middle East. Their story really kicks off in 11th century Egypt, but after their leader, the Caliph el-Hakim, mysteriously vanished, his followers were persecuted and had to flee. And then comes the most critical date in their entire history, 1043. The leaders of the faith declared that the gates of the faith were officially closed. From that moment on, you could no longer convert to become Druze. You had to be born into it. That one decision sealed their identity as a closed, hereditary community forever. So where are they today? Well, the heartlands are right where you'd expect. Syria, Lebanon, Israel. But then you look at that fourth bar, Venezuela. Yep, Venezuela is home to the largest Druze diaspora community in the entire world. It's just a totally unexpected and fascinating chapter in their global story. In the end, there's probably no better metaphor for the Druze than the iconic cedar of Lebanon. It's an ancient tree, its roots run incredibly deep into the mountains, and it is famously, unbelievably resilient, able to withstand centuries of storms. That, really, is the essence of the Druze people, enduring, rooted, and unbreakably strong. Which brings us to our final big question. For a community whose entire survival has depended on isolation and secrecy, what happens now? In our hyper-connected world of social media and nonstop information, can a 1,000-year-old secret really stay hidden? That's the challenge the Druze are facing right now.